You're clearly a woman of conviction. You're being touted as a future leader of the Conservative Party, a future Prime Minister. Comparisons have been made with your robust approach and your clear ideology with Margaret Thatcher. What's happening to the Conservative Party right now, and you being so far behind in the polls, and this support from your original fan base going to Nigel Farage's reform must really hurt? This must be a very difficult election for you to be fighting.
It does hurt, and it is a difficult election. I am fighting my seat like it was a marginal. Normally, it would be a very reliable Conservative seat.
Yeah, you've got 27,000 majority.
Slightly smaller. It's smaller after boundary changes. But there is no safe seat in this election.
What, are you considering that you might lose your seat?
So all of my colleagues are fighting like we are fighting marginals. I have a strong record locally. I think that it's going to be fine. But when I knock on doors, I am meeting former Conservative voters voting reform, and it breaks my heart because I know that they're not going to get what they think they will get if they vote reform.
You must have sympathy with those former Tory stroke now reform voters because a lot of their beliefs will align with yours. I mean, you're known for being a fully throated right-winger. You're a Brexiteer. You know, you make the arguments on the right very clearly, very cogently. And yet the criticism is that the Tories have failed them. The Tories have failed to match their manifesto pledges. They've failed them on tax because tax has gone up rather than down. They've failed them on immigration because it's gone up rather than down. And you're there fighting the good fight like many other Tories on the stump. But it's difficult, and it's also difficult to see these mistakes occurring in the national campaign beyond your control. The D-Day debacle, the betting thing. I mean, how do you turn it around with less than a week to go now until the polls close?
Well, I think we still can turn it around. And what I would say to those voters is, I understand. We have all had our frustrations, even those of us who've been in government, at what has happened. We think immigration is too high. The Prime Minister thinks immigration is too high. We had a system where we were told we'd only get 6,000 people coming in for care. Instead, we got many, many more than that, plus their dependents. But we are bringing it down. But the other thing I think we haven't done well enough is let people know just how much bad stuff we have stopped. People have no idea. I mean, when I was local government minister, the officials in the department wouldn't let me look at the social care funding differently. They said that if I used a formula that benefited councils that spent lots on social care, it would help elderly white Christian areas and would be discriminatory. I stopped that. If you have a Labour MP, that kind of stuff is going to happen. There's so much that we have been doing behind the scenes that people don't realise. I remember when there was that. Do you remember when Nigel Farage's bank account was closed by coups? People don't know the work Conservative ministers did to intervene. We were speaking to them and saying, this is not right, you know, because we own shares in the bank. We intervened. It's going to be Labour next time if people vote Reform or Labour. And if you listen to what Labour said at the time, they didn't care that Nigel Farage's bank account was being closed. Even though he is our opponent, we treat people fairly. If we do have a Labour government, I think that Reform voters and anyone voting anything except Conservative will understand that they will come for you. They will come for you in the same way we saw all of these people go after those people who had run Vote Leave, in the same way that we saw the endless, relentless attacks on Boris Johnson. They will come for if whatever 2 or 3 Reform people manage to get elected. But the difference is it won't be Conservative ministers there, it will be Labour ministers. Like the woman who I was referencing earlier, who said she wishes I didn't exist. That is what's coming. And I'm very worried about that. A
couple of your Conservative colleagues have put their heads above the parapet and said, I will stand as leader. We've had Steve Baker, we've had Tom Tugendhat, we've had Penny Mordaunt hint at it if she retains her seat. Will you run for leader?
Well, I've said to everyone that I don't want to talk about leadership debates because my constituents actually say that they don't like us talking about ourselves. The most common thing that I've heard on the doorstep has actually not been immigration, but that they are tired of the endless personality politics and fighting. So in answering that question, I sort of succumb to it. People knew that I tried to run 2 years ago. I didn't win. Rishi Sunak is the one who had the confidence of MPs. And I think it's actually disrespectful if people are talking about what they're going to do after the leadership when he's still there. My job now is to make sure that I win my seat, that as many of my Conservative colleagues win their seats, and do the very best we can for the country. And that means supporting the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, in what is a very, very difficult job.